Hi, I'm Frankie. I'm the Assistant Principal Examiner for Science GCSE. I mark a lot of papers and I'm here today to talk to the science team about how we can help candidates in the future. As you know, practical skills are assessed in the examination now. About 15% of the marks will be on practical skills. They might be on the core practicals that you're familiar with, but they also might be on the skills, apparatus and techniques that you've learnt in those core practicals in a slightly different context. So these questions can test any of the assessment objectives. If you're asked to write a plan from a core practical that you're familiar with, then that would be AO1. But you might be asked to use a technique or a piece of apparatus from a core practical in a different context. That would be AO2, applying that knowledge. Also, they might give you a method or a set of results and you might be asked to evaluate that or improve that, and that would be AO3. So I've got some exam questions here that we can look at with some exemplar answers, so why don't we do that now? The first question is based on a core practical. It's question 4C1 from the Biology Foundation paper 2. The question is about sampling glowworms. It's really likely that you have not sampled glowworms. You might not even know what a glowworm is. However, you should have carried out sampling methods, including use of quadrats. When answering any question, it's important to stop and think, what is this question about? This question is not testing what you know about glowworms, it's testing what you know about sampling techniques. This question covers AO1 and AO2. It tests knowledge of sampling, which is AO1, and asks you to apply it in an unfamiliar context, which is AO2. The word mean is in bold because you need to describe how to work out the mean in order to answer this question. So the question is not just asking how to take a sample, but how to use the data from a sample. The command word is describe. Describe is a little bit like telling a story. The ideas should flow and they should be linked, but there's no need to explain or justify any part of your answer. Think about it like writing a recipe. It's a series of steps that should go in the correct order, otherwise it won't work. So there are 3 marks for this question, and that means you need to write 3 different things in order to get all the marks. Why don't you pause the video now and have a go at the question? Here's the mark scheme for 4C1. There are 3 marks available, but you can write any 3 of those 5 points to gain the mark. Words that are underlined must be used to gain that mark point. So to gain the first mark point, you have to write quadrat. You can't describe what a quadrat is or use another word. So make sure you can confidently name scientific equipment which is used for practical investigations. Here it was necessary to use the correct scientific term, quadrat, to get that marking point 1. For practical investigations, knowing and using the terms for equipment is important and can help you pick up more marks than just a vague description. Words in brackets, like female on the mark scheme, do not need to be there, but it must be clear from your answer that you're talking about the right thing. So you don't need the word female to get the 3rd marking point, but you can't state all glowworms or male glowworms, as this would be the wrong sample. Words in bold also do not need to be there. Alternative words can be used. So for example, tally the amount would be okay for the mark for count. Here is an example of a 3-mark answer. So if you have a look at this, put a quadrat, that word quadrat gets the marking point 1, so that's the first mark. Putting that quadrat into different areas will give them marking point 2. You can see on the mark scheme it says random placement, and that's enough for put it into different areas. When it says divide the number of glowworms you recorded by the number of areas you place quadrants in, that's mark point 5, which is total number found divided by total number of samples. You don't always need to use the exact words that you will see on a mark scheme. The next question is about how to use a microscope effectively, which is something you should be able to do. However, this is an AO3 question, which means that you have to analyse the information and develop that, possibly with giving some improvements. This question is based on a core practical 1.6. The command word here is explain. This means there must be a justification of points made. There are 4 marks available, which means that you would be expected to give 2 improvements, each worth a mark, and then justify or explain each improvement, and each of those justifications is also worth a mark. There are several ways this method can be improved, but you can only gain 2 marks for improvements in this question. The other 2 marks must be for explanations of those improvements. The explanations should be correctly linked to the improvement to gain the explanation mark. Again, it's important to stop and think, what is this question about? It is about the method of using a light microscope. Therefore, there will be no marks for suggesting using an electron microscope here, as this changes the method to a different method, rather than improve the method being used. This is a very fine distinction to make. A question that asks for suggestions of other methods or apparatus to be used to see onion cells would credit use of electron microscopes. An explain question would usually require a statement followed by reasoned justification to extend the statement. Use this structure as a basis for your answers to this type of explain question. The 1 and the 2 on the answer lines will help you. You may want to stop the video now to have a go at this question. Just remember, what does the command word want you to do? Here is the mark scheme for 4A. As you can see, there are 5 linked pairs, but you only have to write any 2 of those 5 linked pairs to gain the marks. If you only wrote the first point from each linked pair, the most marks you could gain is 2, even if you wrote all 5. There must be the linked justifications for the other 2 marks. This mark scheme has information in the additional guidance column. This shows the examiner other words or ideas that they could accept. The answers under the answer column are the answers we are looking for and what we expect you to know. If there is a / between words or ideas, for example where it says single/thin, this means that either is acceptable, but if both are written they will only get 1 mark as they are the same mark point. So remember, with a question like this, you need to give 2 improvements and 2 explanations that are linked, just like this candidate has. You can see they've given 2 improvements. The first one, put a stain, that's MP1 from the mark scheme. Putting that stain on the onion so they can see it's easier to see parts of the cell will get them mark point 2. The second improvement is move the mirror, and that's the improvement for mark point 9. And then to get more light in so you can see the cells clearly is the justification for mark point 10. This question is about using a Liebig condenser, so this is apparatus that you should know. It's an AO1 and AO2 question, which means you need to recall how to use it and then apply that knowledge. This question asks you to use arrows to show the flow of water. It's a good idea to trace the water flow once you've drawn it with your finger to make sure it can flow that way. Many candidates drew arrows that implied the water could flow through glass. This is obviously wrong. There's only 1 mark here, however the question asks for arrows, plural, so you must draw more than 1 arrow to get the mark. It asks for flow in and flow out, so it's clear 2 arrows are needed. You may want to pause the video for a few minutes to attempt this question. Here is the mark scheme for 4B1. The mark scheme does not specify the number of arrows, but it must be clear that the water goes in at the bottom and leaves at the top. This looks like an easy question, but many candidates got it wrong because they had not considered how a condenser is used. Here is an example of a 1 mark answer. The arrows drawn show water going in the condenser at the bottom and out of the condenser at the top, so gains the mark. So if we look at some of the things that we've talked about today, some of the key ideas, first thing to do is when you read a question, stop and think, what is this question about? What is the science? What is the concept? Is it about apparatus and techniques? It might be a context that you're not familiar with, but you will know the answer. Secondly is think about what style of question it is. Is it just basic recall, or are you having to apply some of that knowledge, or are you going to have to evaluate or improve something? They'll also tell you how many marks are on the question. So if it's 3 marks, you need 3 specific points to get all of those marks. And lastly, what is the command word? The command word really does tell you how to answer that question. Okay, I better go meet the team now so I can share this information with them. But don't forget, we've got a website and there's plenty of information on there. to the Science GCSE Edexcel website. There's past papers and there's guidance documents, all of which can help you.